After almost a year of mass protests from students in Quebec, the new government has decided to cancel a proposed tuition hike. The Quebec cabinet wanted to raise tuition by 82 over a 5-year period. But the students decided that they just wouldn't allow it. The first strike was initiated by one student group in February of 2012, and within just 3 months, crowds as large as 500,000 were marching in downtown Montreal. And in response, the government decided to invoke emergency legislation, which was used to criminalize protesters and quell dissent. But regardless of the harsh attempt to stifle the movement persevered. Now, joining me now to break down their success, along with what lessons Americans can learn, is co-spokesperson of Class A, Jeremia. I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher your name. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
My name is Jeremy Bédard-Vigne.
Awesome to have you on. So let's start talking about, how were you able to keep this movement so strong? What was the biggest success that you felt? I mean, how did you get such mass mobilization out there? Or how did the movement get such mass mobilization?
Well, it's very simple. We worked on this for about 2 years. The international media noticed us in April or in May, but the organization work was done much prior to that, much prior to the beginning of the unlimited general strike that we triggered in February. Over 2 years, we managed to mobilize students around the issue of this tuition hike, around broader issues such as free education and the privatization of the public services. And this is why they voted in such huge numbers in favor of the strike and continued to strike over 6 months. And of course, the Liberal government helped us by refusing repeatedly to negotiate, to open even a line of communication, even entering the 8th or 9th week of strike after a huge protest of hundreds of thousands of people. He still refused to negotiate, first negotiate at all, and then negotiate on fair terms, which is why the population, the anger amongst the population mounted. And this didn't affect students, but also the broader population as it went down into the streets, first in support of the students and then in defense of their democratic rights as stifled by Bill 78, which was the repressive anti-demonstration legislation that you talked about. So this is a victory of those hundreds of thousands of Quebecers, be them students or citizens, who have resisted for 6 months.
So, I mean, you're saying that there's been years of planning, and I think, compared to the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was very kind of impromptu, I guess what advice would you give? I mean, basically what you're saying is that there is a lot of work, a lot of legwork that we didn't necessarily see that went into making this a success.
Precisely. 2 years ago, the demonstrations did not regroup hundreds of thousands, even tens of thousands. They regrouped a few thousand students. From the very day this legislation, the tuition hike, was announced 2 years ago in April of 2010. And gradually, more and more students learned about the tuition hike, learned about what it meant, what an attack it was on the accessibility to education. They participated to their general assemblies through a very organized system of direct democracy, direct union democracy, decided on continuing the struggle over 2 years until we finally got to the point where a general strike was justifiable in the eye of so many students.
It really does show you how much really needs to go into it, and I think the Occupy Wall Street movement, I keep comparing it back to here because that's what I'm familiar with, but I think really strategizing, organizing, and regrouping, it's not all about the in-the-street protests. It really needs to be a lot of that work. I wanted to actually say a quote that Naomi Klein said. She said, "This is why radical movements are mercilessly mocked. They can win." Why is it that you think that protest movements like this are mocked, and what do you think just about what she said there?
Well, I think Klein has a point here. It's very important to note that our movement was extremely organized, was not spontaneous, relied on elaborate democratic mechanisms through that union democracy I talked to you about. And this is why we managed to win. We had demands. We did not want the end of capitalism, for instance. We managed to have precise aims, for instance, ending this tuition hike, and link it to a broader context, which is why we were first able to mobilize students on numbers, and then gradually they thought about this issue of the tuition hike, replaced it in a broader context of attacks on education, on public services, learned about what neoliberalism meant, and we may not have ended neoliberalism. We did end a tuition hike.
Indeed, yes, having definitely a focus and really strategizing, focused on a goal, and you guys did it. And thank you so much for coming on and kind of sharing your insight on how that all went down, Jeremy.
Precisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.